with respect to family problems, business decisions, courage is very important. And remember, there is a difference between courage and bravery. Yung mga matatapang dahil hindi sila takot, ibang usapan niya. Iba yung pumapasok ka sa isang bagay, natakot ka. That is a courageous person. But someone who enters afraid, who enters a danger area, probably without knowing what that area is either ignorant of the danger or is reckless. The third value that I would like to mention would be humility. Be a good student and learner. That is what I would like to mention as the meaning of humility as far as I'm concerned. Be a good student and learner. There are so many things to learn. You know, I think for many of us here, especially for those already generals, senior colonels who have had a very bright career, who excelled in the academy, in the flying school, sometimes it may be difficult to be humble. Sometimes it's easier to be proud. But humility is something that is very important, to learn something new every day. One of the biggest lessons I learned from a Taipan in the Philippines, and this is Mr. Lusutan, who I worked with for about 2 years during my career in the private sector, was his lesson to me, his advice to me, to learn something new every day. And you know, Lusutan is someone who just did not lecture, who just did not preach. He was doing what he was preaching, because the first time I met him, he asked me to sit down with him, and he asked me to give him a briefing. I was then Postmaster General, and he asked me to give a briefing on my post office operations. And I thought he was just being kind to me by asking questions about my job, but I found out that he was indeed very curious, because he even came out with his usual yellow paper and took notes of what I was talking about. He took note, and a few years after, he remembered many of the things I mentioned. And he is someone who really was practicing what he was preaching. Learn something new every day. You may be a general already, you may be the commanding general of the Philippine Air Force, you may be a 5-term congressman, but there's always something new that we can learn. We must humble down. And if I look back at my experience in the post office, many of the things that I learned that enabled me to radically revolutionize the postal service during that time were things that I learned by talking to humble letter carriers, humble mail sorters, and humble drivers. Because these were the people who knew the brass tacks of postal operations. I sat down with them, the way Lusutan, the billionaire, sat down with me, and talked to them about their problems, about their thoughts on operations. And that was where I developed many of the principles that I applied later when I formulated and implemented Project Mercury. But if I did not humble down, if I looked at myself as someone, MBA graduate, Annapolis graduate, former officer during that time, with an academic background, why would I listen to a mail sorter? Why would I listen to a letter carrier? But I did. I humbled down. Because that is something that we learn also very early in the academy. One must become humble. One must learn something new as a plebe. And today, my friends here in the Philippine Air Force, there are more opportunities for learning. We have Google, we have Wikipedia, we have YouTube, we have so many things, we have the internet. And that is what I'm doing every day. You know, I'm a person who is knowledge-bound, who is internet-bound. There is no way that I can finish or start the day without looking at the internet in order to learn something new about my favorite subjects. The introducer mentioned me as one of the respected debaters in the House of Representatives. Well, probably that may be so. But the reason why I'm able to debate is not just because of what I learned in the Naval Academy. It's not only because of my experience as a debater in intercollegiate in the UP during my undergraduate time, but because of my daily effort to absorb something new through the internet. And in this particular case, this is going to be my advice to you. You are rising higher in the organization. You may be the commanding general of the Philippine Air Force. You may be an air wing commander. You may be occupying a very sensitive staff position. But there's still something that you can learn. Because as you go up in the organization, you must have a bigger world view. Not just the view as seen within the Philippine Air Force Command, but the bigger view, the country view, and probably the world view. I have, how do I do this right now? I have Google Alert. I don't know whether you're familiar with Google Alert. Through Google Alert, you can tell Google to email to you all the major articles that come out in the internet on your major subjects. Like for example, in my case, what are my Google Alerts? I have Google Alerts on biofuels, nuclear energy, on energy in general, on President Obama, on what's happening in the United States, on Iran, on Russia, on Afghanistan, on Iraq, on energy, on the Constitution, and even some specific persons, including myself, because I'd like to know what are being mentioned as far as I'm concerned in media, even in some blogs on the Navy, on the Philippine Navy. So one must learn something new. And today, because of the internet, there's so much opportunity, unlimited opportunity, that I did not have when I was Postmaster General, that you have today. Knowledge is power. Believe me, knowledge is power. When you have knowledge at the tip of your fingers, that is power. When you are, for example, in a central staff discussion, and you're able to mention knowledge, mention references, that is power. Because that can close the debate right then and there. I remember so many instances in the cabinet where I had to debate with some members of the cabinet. But the moment I was able to use references, to mention some articles, to mention some authors, then that became power. It made me credible. It made me win the day in most of the time. But of course, that can only become possible if you have the humility to accept that you still don't know enough. Sabi nga nila, the student is ready, the teacher will appear when the student is ready. Remember